We're on the record.
Today is May 9th, and we're in the matter of Zachary Coughlin, case number 06M13755. We're resuming with what?
Your Honor, well, what I would request is that we can take some witnesses out of order because I have witnesses lined up since 9:30 this morning when we were supposed to start trial, and a few of them are flying in from Las Vegas.
Okay, why don't we take those witnesses first? So we're going to take things a little out of order.
And also, Your Honor, I understand that we're stopping today at 4 p.m.
Yes.
Is it possible to either shorten the lunch or maybe work through lunch today since we have such a short amount of time and I have many witnesses?
We can work to 1:30.
Okay.
Okay. And then
maybe if you just go with the stuff you have that's important and has some substance to it, not every little thing that you found.
Okay, so anyway, we'll go to 1:30 and then we'll take an hour break.
You want an hour? I could do it in a half.
Okay, a half an hour.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor.
Okay.
And also, one more point of business. I misspoke yesterday about Dr. Tucker. I thought he would be able to testify tomorrow. However, he's advised that he is going to be in the state of Washington tomorrow, but would be available to testify by phone if that's possible. Or if that's not possible, Your Honor, if we could have maybe an hour scheduled at another time for him to testify about his report.
I can do it by phone. It will depend on whether Mr. Coughlin will agree to it.
Do I have to decide that right now, Your Honor?
No, you don't have to decide it right now. You can decide by the end of the day if you would agree to it.
For instance, I couldn't have done my deposition by phone, right?
I don't know. It depends on whether parties stipulate.
Well, Ms. Kagan wouldn't stipulate, so I drove down here instead of having to make her drive to Reno to do the deposition. So.
Okay. Well, this is it's a little different.
Okay.
Because the issue is how much cross-examination do you want to do? You had an interview with him for 3 hours, so have you looked at his report?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you have questions you want to ask?
Yes.
Okay. And the question is do you want to do it over the phone or do you want to see him here? But you can think about that.
Because I'm kind of leaning towards not to go against anybody's recommendation, or certainly if you think it's better to do it the other way,
I'm leaving it totally up to you. And it also depends on when you can come back again.
Okay.
So it's up to you.
You'd like to do it today, though, Susan?
I'm sorry?
We were talking about this.
Dr. Tucker?
This point you just brought up.
He said that he's available to testify by phone tomorrow morning, I believe. So it would be tomorrow morning.
What we were talking about when you brought that point up is we were talking about whether or not we would have him come back here in person rather than just do it the way you want to do it. No, we've kind of been doing everything your way.
I see.
But
Your Honor, if Mr. Coughlin does not agree to accept testimony by phone, that's fine. I would request that we have an extra hour set aside to resume this trial at a later date.
Right. And what Mr. Coughlin has to understand is he'd have to come back for that.
Right.
And I'll leave it up to him. Okay? But you need to let us know by late this afternoon.
Okay.
Okay. So.
Thank you. Your Honor, the State Bar calls Officer Jeff George to the stand.
Sure. Yeah, it's a confidential proceeding. Oh, but it's from the office.
Okay.
He's from the
I
same
know that,
office.
but not everybody knows that.
Okay. Okay, well, this is a confidential proceeding, and the person sitting back there is someone from the State Bar, so I just want you to know that. Okay?
That person.
Yes.
And can we discuss why they're back there?
Because he's from the State Bar, and I presume that he's watching the proceedings.
But he's not affiliated with the State Bar Court?
No, he's not affiliated with the State Bar Court. He's from the State Bar's office,
Okay.
the Office of Trial Counsel.
Okay.
Okay, so what I'm saying is that he can sit in the hearing.
Even though it's confidential?
Yes, because he's from that.
Is he working on this case, or
No, he's not working on this case.
can I ask why he's here then?
It doesn't matter why he's here. He works in the State Bar. Okay?
Okay. So anybody who works at the State Bar could
Anyone who works in the Chief Trial Counsel's office
Okay.
can sit in.
Okay.
Other witnesses can't,
All right.
or other people from the public. It's not open to the public. Okay. Okay.
Would you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly state under penalty of perjury that the evidence that you shall give in this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please be seated and state and spell your first and last name for the record.
Yes, I'm Officer Jeff George, Jeffgeorge.
Thank you.
Good morning, Officer George.
Morning.
Can you please state your current employment?
I am currently employed by the state of California, specifically the California Highway Patrol, and I'm assigned to the North Sacramento area office.
How long have you been in that position?
I've been employed by the Highway Patrol for 16 and a half years, and I've been assigned to the North Sacramento station for 11 years.
And as part of your job, do you have to do you make arrests?
I do.
And have you ever made any arrests for DUIs?
I have.
How many arrests for DUIs have you made, Officer George?
I've personally made about 3,000 DUI arrests over my career and assisted in maybe 4,000 additional.
And before you made those arrests, did you have any training in DUI arrests?
I do.
And what kind of training did you have?
I was originally received my training, which was 52 hours in DUI training while in the CHP Academy in 1990.
Do you have any additional training to that?
I do.
And what is that?
I was certified as a drug recognition evaluator in 1998. That course consisted of 80 hours of classroom and 40 hours of field certifications where I did hands-on, basically put my classroom skills to use, did hands-on evaluations of persons that were under the influence of various types of drugs.
And what exactly were you taught?
Basically, there's a 13-step process to go through, evaluation process. We were taught the 13, each of the 13 steps. We were taught what drugs have what symptoms, what symptomology to look for, and how to administer a given set of tests that check for those various symptoms.
Do you recall arresting Mr. Coughlin, who is the applicant in this matter?
I do.
And how do you recall that?
Well, originally, when I got subpoenaed by this court, I reviewed the arrest report, and I remember distinctly making this arrest. And also, when I saw him today, I remembered him also.
Can you turn to Exhibit 69, please? It's in the witness binder that's in front of you.
Okay.
Now, do you recognize Exhibit 69?
Yes, the first page of the exhibit, marked number 69, is the arrest report, commonly referred to as the booking sheet for the Sacramento County Jail. The next page would be the probable cause declaration, which is also a Sacramento County Main Jail form.
Your Honor, can I make an objection?
Sure. But it has to be a legal objection.
Okay.
Okay?
My objection would be relevancy, and specifically pointing to, in the application for admission to the State Bar, it deals with convictions. And we're talking about an arrest right here. And as I understand this application, arrests don't even need to be reported, right? If you had a conviction, you report the conviction, and that's it. And so I don't understand the relevancy, and I don't understand the
I'm going to
basis.
overrule the objection because it goes to, once it's reported, it goes to the issue of whether you were candid.
Okay, so reporting something that didn't even need to be reported, does that show candor?
Reporting something that might show candor depends on what you say about what you reported, which is, I'm assuming at this point it might be the State Bar is presenting evidence that what you reported wasn't candid.
Okay, so would one be better off not reporting this arrest at all?
That's not an objection, so I'm going to overrule the
Okay.
objection, okay?
Okay, I'm sorry, Officer George. Can you continue with page 3 of Exhibit 69?
Page 3 would be referred to as a CHP 202, which is driving under the influence arrest investigation report. This is a 4-page document that was prepared by me on January 23rd of 2003.
And was the arrest on January 23rd, 2003?
It was.
And did you prepare Exhibit 69, pages 1 through 9?
Yes. There are actually 2 separate reports. Pages 1 through 4 would be the driving under the influence arrest report. Then there's a supplemental report, which is a 202 DRE. That's a CHP form. It's a drug recognition evaluation. It's a supplemental to the arrest report, and that report is also 4 pages.
And you wrote both of these reports?
I did.
Okay. Did you have a chance to review these? Well, first of all, Your Honor, no.
My understanding, just so I can clear up matters, that this is arrest that led to the conviction of the reckless.
Correct, Your
So it is a conviction, so that's another reason why your objection would be overruled.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understand, Your Honor.
This is an arrest that led to a conviction for a dry reckless, right?
Right.
Convictions are your duty. You have to report convictions.
Right, but does that mean you have to report the charge? If the charges that you were arrested for, if those didn't lead to
It doesn't
convictions, you
matter.
were
It's a
convicted on
conviction
another
at
charge.
this point. It's a conviction. So let's just proceed.
Your Honor, I request to have Exhibit 69, pages 1 through 9, moved into evidence.
Is there any objection?
Yes, I would object on preserving an objection on that, on the grounds that I don't believe this is something that can be admitted, given the
What's the
application.
objection? The legal objection.
Foundation, relevancy, hearsay, not properly authenticated.
Okay, it's overruled. It's admitted.
Okay, Officer, did you have a chance to review this report before testifying today?
I have.
And is it your opinion that the statements made in your report are accurate or an accurate representation of what happened during the arrest of Mr. Coughlin?
They are.
Can you describe how the arrest took place?
Yeah, this arrest basically stemmed from a traffic stop for a minor infraction, which was non-use of a safety restraint or seatbelt. Mr. Coughlin was a solo occupant in a vehicle. He was observed while stopped at a traffic light at the intersection of Howe Avenue and Cottage Way without his seatbelt on. I made a traffic stop and contacted him. He was identified by a Nevada driver's license. I explained to him why he was stopped, and during the conversation with Mr. Coughlin, I noticed objective symptoms of intoxication and possible drug influence.
And what were those symptoms?
Well, I noticed that his eyes were red and watery. I could smell a strong odor of freshly burnt marijuana inside his vehicle. When I had him step out of his vehicle, he was unsteady on his feet. I could smell the odor of the freshly burnt marijuana about his person, his hair, his clothing. When I got close to him, his breath smelled of marijuana. His pupils were dilated for the lighting conditions and slow to react to light stimulus. And the totality of all of that, based on my training and experience, I felt that I needed to proceed further and investigate.
And what happened once you decided that?
He was eventually given some field sobriety tests, which he was unable to perform, as demonstrator explained, and he was arrested for driving under the influence.
What did you believe Mr. Coughlin to be under the influence at the time that you made the arrest?
My initial suspicion was cannabis or marijuana. He was transported after being arrested down to the Sacramento County Jail, where a drug recognition evaluation was conducted in a controlled environment. At the completion of that, I confirmed my suspicion that he was under the influence of marijuana.
When you said you performed field sobriety tests, or you asked Mr. Coughlin to perform those tests?
I did.
What test did you ask him to perform?
A Romberg test.
And can you explain what that is?
Basically, Mr. Coughlin was asked to stand with his feet together, heels and toes touching, his arms down at his sides, to tip his head back, and to estimate 30 seconds.
And was he able to do that?
Well, initially he did tip his head back. He did keep his arms down at his sides. He swayed with a variance of about 3 inches, and during the 30 seconds he slowly lowered his head instead of keeping his head back.
So would you say that he passed that test or failed that test?
Well, they're not really pass or fail. They're designed to check for divided attention impairment. I would say that he did not perform that test sufficiently.
And what other tests did you ask Mr. Coughlin to perform?
A standing on 1 foot test. That test consists of having Mr. Coughlin from the position that he was previously in, with his feet together, heels and toes touching, raise 1 foot approximately 6 inches from the ground, keeping his toe pointed forward, arms down at his sides. He was instructed to look at his foot and count aloud from 1,001 to 1,030.
And was he able to perform that?
Not sufficiently, no.
Okay. Were there any other tests that were that you asked him to perform?
Yes, he was given a finger count test.
Okay.
And that test consists of having one hand, holding one hand up, palm open, using the thumb as a pointer, touching it to the tips of the fingers, starting with the pinky and counting each finger aloud, with thumb to pinky being 1, the next finger being 2, 3, 4, and then open hand is 5. Then in a reverse order, open hand again is 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1.
And was he able to perform that test?
He did perform the test, but not sufficiently. He counted from 1 to 5 in both directions.
Okay. Were there any other tests that he was asked to
At that
perform?
point, no.
Okay. And you stated that there was another point where he was actually taken somewhere and given different testing?
Yes, he was taken down to the Sacramento County Main Jail, where he was given some additional tests as part of the procedure for the drug recognition evaluation.
And who gave him those tests?
I did.
And what tests were those?
Objection.
Objection.
Well, I don't see in the report where some of this is, that this...
That's not an objection. What you need to do is cross-examine if you have problems with it.
Okay.
It's overruled.
Officer, what tests were given at that later time?
Again, he was given a Romberg test. He was given a walking heel-to-toe test, a standing on 1 foot, and a finger-to-nose test.
And how did he perform those tests, in your opinion?
He did not perform them as demonstrated or explained again.
In your opinion, have you made arrests before for driving under the influence of marijuana?
I have.
And is there anything specific that you look for with respect to driving under the influence of marijuana?
Well, marijuana influence are certain physical indicators. One would be the dilated pupils, slow to respond to light stimulus. An increased marijuana influence can result in an increased heart rate, an increased blood pressure, body temperature could be increased. There's a test that we do as part of the eye evaluation. It's called a lack of convergence. When one smokes marijuana, you will tend to see that lack of convergence, meaning that their eyes won't cross. One eye will generally kick out, and that was present in this case. Part of the eye evaluation requires that he be taken into a dark room, let his eyes adjust to darkness, and under different stages of light would be introduced at different strengths. A person that's not under the influence, their eyes would react one way. His eyes reacted in a way that was consistent with my training and experience for marijuana influence.
What about
If I can...
go ahead.
If I can backtrack a little bit, another thing that we check would be we look in someone's mouth, have them pull their lower lip down to look for debris in their gums or teeth, have them stick out their tongue, look for indications of what I would consider recent marijuana use, and that would be indicated by the green that's in the marijuana comes out and stains the tongue when people smoke it. So we check the tongue, and in this case, his tongue was coated with a green pasty film.
Okay. Can you estimate, based on your experience, whether Mr. Coughlin had ingested marijuana within the past 24 hours?
Again, based on my training and what I've been trained to look for, marijuana impairment is generally up to 4 hours. Beyond that, you wouldn't necessarily see the indicators that he displayed to me. So if I had to put a time estimate on it, I would say for sure within 24 hours and more than likely within 4 hours at the time of the arrest.
In your experience, are you aware of any instances where somebody would maybe have smoked marijuana in the weeks preceding an arrest and still show signs that you were talking about that Mr. Coughlin exhibited?
No. Let's say a daily user for marijuana. Again, the signs of impairment are only going to last about 4 hours from the time he used. So if he had smoked a week, prior, he may come back positive for THC or marijuana in his chemical test, but he would show no signs of impairment.
And in your opinion, was Mr. Coughlin showing signs of impairment at the time that you arrested him on January 23rd, 2003?
Most definitely.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Hello, Officer George. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Fine, thanks. Officer George, I'd like to ask you a few initial questions. I assume you graduated from high school?
I did.
Okay. Can you tell me what your GPA was in high school?
Objection, relevancy, and beyond the scope of direct.
Your Honor, I think it goes to, no? Okay.
No.
All right. Did you go to college, Officer George?
I attended some college.
Did you graduate from college?
I did not.
Can you describe what and how much college and what sort of classes you took?
Objection, relevancy.
He's an expert, right? He's a drug recognition expert who got out of high school. So.
I'm going to sustain the objection.
Okay. So we can't go into this expert's.
You can go into his expertise. He's been a highway patrol officer for 16 years. He's made 3,000 DUI arrests in his career. Go into that. Mm-hmm. His training, 52 hours, as I understand. He's certified as a drug recognition evaluator. Mm-hmm. Okay?
Okay.
You can go into those.
But we can't go into whether he took science courses or anything like that. Into some.
What we need to do is go into his training as a person who has made 3,000 arrests.
Yes, Your Honor. Okay. Officer George, you've made 3,000 arrests and assisted in some 4,000 others. Where would that fall? Where would that compare to your peers? Say someone who, you've been a highway patrol officer for 11 years, you say?
16.
16.
16? Okay. Where does that fall? Are you like Hall of Fame, or are you like?
Objection, relevancy.
Sustained.
Your Honor.
And also, your tone needs to be different.
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, what if one officer had made 20,000 arrests and one had made 500?
You're not to ask the court questions. You're supposed to proceed as an attorney.
I'm arguing my objection.
Okay. And what I'm saying is the objection should be a legal objection, not a speaking objection.
Okay, and her objection was relevancy, and I'm explaining why it should not be.
And I have
sustained.
sustained it, so you need to ask the next question.
So I don't get an opportunity to.
You need to ask the next question. Let's
Okay.
ask the next question.
Okay. So is that a high number of arrests for DUI? Where do you compare to your peers?
Objection, relevancy, asked, and this was already ruled on, Your Honor.
Your question is 3,000 arrests, right?
Where does that fit in?
I'm going to sustain the objection.
Well, he certainly went. Okay, Your Honor. Officer George, you certainly went into a lot of detail and got to speak on pretty much whatever it is Ms. Kagan asked you about. So we got a good idea of, your background as it relates to the things Ms. Kagan wants us to know.
What's the question?
Well, let's go to the arrests. Do you recall pulling me over for having my seatbelt off?
I do.
And can you describe that? Were you driving your vehicle?
I'd have to refer to the report, but I believe so.
Okay. And was there someone with you?
Yes.
And who was that?
Officer Amy Escatel.
Okay. But she didn't contribute to this report? What was her role that day?
Cover.
Okay, so she was covering.
Correct.
And so for instance, would her opinions, if they differed from yours, would they be included in this report?
No, she's not the arresting nor the evaluating officer.
Okay, so she doesn't get to have an opinion?
Objection, argumentative, and
I'm going to sustain it on relevancy grounds.
Okay. Can you tell me, during this arrest, you pulled me over for having my seatbelt off, right? You noticed as you were driving past me at a stoplight, and you noticed I had my seatbelt off. And you might have been driving, and while that time, if you were driving, you noticed somebody who was at a stoplight had their seatbelt off. So you turn around and pull me over. Do you recall asking me to take a blood alcohol test?
At which point?
That would be after you pulled me over, while we're still on this side of the road.
Again, you're going to have to narrow it down. At which point?
Any point.
Yes, after you were arrested, I explained to you the implied consent law in the state of California,
Prior to
which
being
requires
arrested.
you to submit to either a blood, breath, or urine test.
Prior to being arrested.
Prior to being arrested,
Shortly after being pulled over.
did I ask you to take?
A blow test.
No.
You didn't.
No.
You don't recall a conversation that took place between us regarding that. Wherein shortly after pulling me over, you asked me to get out of the car and take a blood alcohol blow test. And this was after I told you how much I had to drink that night.
Is this a question? Is this?
Why
I
don't you
haven't even finished my
ask the question?
Okay. Well, my question is why don't you remember this when I have a memory of having a long conversation about this with you?
Objection.
Okay. Why don't you ask a proper question?
So you never, why didn't you? You're saying you pulled someone over on suspicion of DUI and yet you didn't ask them to take a blow test?
Well, that's actually incorrect. What I pulled you over for was non-use of seatbelt.
Okay.
Which
That was the pretext you pulled me over to. Go ahead.
Objection. Object to the word pretext.
Okay, I'm going to sustain the objection.
Okay.
Let's ask a legal question.
Okay. And he was answering.
No, what's your question?
Well, my question that he was answering was why didn't you do a field sobriety, a blow test in the field? And you were going into why you pulled me over. and what you
Okay.
use that for.
Were you going to let me answer the original question?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead,
Or was there going to be a
Officer George.
narrative after that? Okay, so the question was, why didn't I have you take a blow test at the scene?
Yeah.
Because at no time did I suspect that you were under the influence of alcohol, and that's what that test would check for.
Okay. Do you recall saying to me, after I asked you why you wanted me to take a blow test, saying, you can do it or you cannot do it, but if you refuse to take this blow test, I'll just arrest you, and then you'll have to go to the station and take a urine or a blood.
No.
Do you recall yourself and myself having a discussion about the legal merits of asking someone to take a blow test when you have no reasoning to believe they've had a drink that night?
No,
I don't recall that either. It's a long conversation.
Let him answer the question first.
Actually, my recollection of the conversation with you was that you felt that because you were a law student that I could not prove that you were under the influence of anything and that you had not been drinking other than one glass of wine approximately 4 hours prior to being stopped.
Were we discussing that in the context of you wanting to take a blow test?
No. That was...
Why were we discussing that then?
You're going to have to let him finish his
Okay.
answers, okay?
My recollection is
I
that...
just wanted a yes or no, Your Honor.
I understand that, but as yesterday, when you were asked questions and you wanted to explain, I always allowed you to explain a yes or no answer. He is allowed to explain a yes or no answer.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, now I'm confused. What was the question?
Why don't you ask the question again?
I asked whether or not you asked for a blood test, and then I asked you if you remembered the legal kind of discussion we had about why I was asking you, do you have a right to make me take a blood test if I haven't demonstrated any signs of intoxication and you don't smell alcohol and all you have is you pulled me over for a seatbelt and then you got mad
Okay,
that
why
I would
don't you ask
challenge your
him the
authority?
question, not ask, what's your question?
I'm asking him to explain why he was just saying what he was saying about I didn't have you take one in the field because you and I were having a conversation about the merits of doing so in the field, and then I explained to you. So,
Okay, ask the question.
all
Ask
right,
the question.
did you have me take a blow test in the field?
No.
Did we discuss taking a blow test in the field, and did you get upset once I...
Objection compound.
Okay,
Did you discuss
it's
taking a blow
sustained.
test in the field with me?
No.
Okay. Can you explain what you were just describing in relation to that? Or can we have it read back? Because he went in to describe it.
We don't have a read back. You have to remember the question you asked.
Okay.
I believe what I stated...
Something about being a law student. I remember that. Okay, so obviously we're talking, right? We're talking about law stuff. And you're saying, you're a law student. You think you can tell me what,
No, that's not
Okay.
my recollection of the
Right.
conversation.
Well,
Okay, so
I
what's the
remember you
next
were belligerent
question?
towards lawyers when we were talking.
Objection, argumentative, and there's no question pending.
Sustained. Let's ask a question, okay?
Can you tell me why you knew I was in law school?
Because you made it very clear that you wanted me to know that. You stated to me that you were in law school.
Do you remember having a discussion about where you were saying, wow, 3 years of law school down the drain, huh?
No.
You don't remember that? Do you remember us having a discussion about law school?
The discussion that we had about law school in my recollection was that you told me that you were in law school and that there was no way you were going to get a DUI when you hadn't been drinking, and I didn't give you a breath test in the field.
Wait. Now
What's
we're
the
talking
next
about breath
question?
tests?
What's
Now
the
we're
next-
talking about breath tests.
And again,
Mr.
as I
Coughlin.
stated earlier,
Okay.
this all took place after you had been taken into custody.
In the car or
Yes.
at the
Mr.
station?
Coughlin, what you need to do is ask questions, okay?
Okay. So we didn't, in the field, we didn't talk about a breath test in the field? That never came up?
Okay, again, I didn't offer you a breath test in the field because at no time did I suspect that you were under the influence of alcohol, and that's what that test checks for.
And I didn't refuse to take a breath test in the field?
You weren't offered one. There wasn't anything for you to refuse.
Right, okay. And would that be noted in your report?
If You were given a breath test? Yes.
And if I wasn't given a breath test, wouldn't that be standard for a DUI to test for a breath test?
No.
It wouldn't be.
Are you asking me the same question?
Yeah,
the
can you
answer's still
explain
the
that?
same, no.
You're arresting someone for DUI, but you don't give them a blow test, whatever you call it, breath test.
I'm not sure that you have a comprehension of how this works.
I don't see how anyone could, but go ahead.
That field breath test that you're referring to is called a preliminary alcohol screening device. It's a field sobriety test to further assist me in determining whether or not you're under the influence of alcohol. Again, at no time during my contact with you did I suspect that you were under the influence of alcohol. That is why you were not offered that test in the field.
Did you ask me how much I had to drink that night?
I did.
Why?
Because it's a standard question.
Like taking a breath test would be standard?
Again, that is not a breath test. It's a preliminary alcohol screening device.
Whatever.
It's a field
Let's
sobriety
just say
test.
breath test, okay.
Well, that would be an incorrect statement.
Okay.
It's not a breath test.
But you're blowing your breath into it?
It is a field
Testing
sobriety
something?
test to determine,
What would you like
assist
me
me
to
in
call
determining.
it?
It's called a preliminary alcohol screening device.
So you take a test from a preliminary alcohol screening device.
That is a field sobriety test to further assist me in determining whether or not you're under the influence of alcohol.
Does it give you a reading?
It does give a reading.
Like a .08 or below or under, that kind of thing?
Well, we're talking again hypothetically because none of this applies in your case. You were not offered that test because at no time did I suspect you were under the influence of alcohol.
But at some point I took that test, right?
You did. As part of the procedure for the drug evaluation, the part of that procedure is to rule out alcohol as an intoxicant.
But you wouldn't do that at the scene.
Correct.
But you did it later.
Correct. Because it's part of the process for the drug evaluation. I knew that you were going to come back zero. You were not suspected of being under the influence of alcohol. That's part of the procedure at that time to take that test.
Did we discuss that in the field?
No.
We didn't discuss that you knew I was going to come back zero for alcohol.
No.
Objection, asked and answered.
At this point, no more questions in that area. I think it's clear he did not arrest you.
Your Honor, if I may, just explain why I'm going. I'm going into this because it's my belief that Officer George got upset with me for taking issue with his wanting to do a breath test for me when I knew that I...
You've explored that issue, okay? Let's go on to the next question.
You say on the Romberg test that I went 5, 4, 3, something like that. 1, 2, 3, 4,
No.
5.
That would be the finger count test,
Finger
not the
count
Romberg test.
Okay. You're the expert, right?
Objection, argumentative.
Sustained.
Okay. On the finger count test, can you describe again how I failed that test?
Yes, you counted 1 through 5, and then 1 through 5 again when you were supposed to count 5 through 1.
And did you note that in your report?
I did?
Because I don't see that. Can you explain that to me where that is?
Sure. Okay. Page 3 of the arrest, driving under the influence arrest report, line 9, says finger count. The subject counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on all 3 repetitions.
I'm sorry. I'm having trouble finding it. This is on Exhibit 69?
Correct.
Okay. Well, page 3?
Page 3 of the CHP 202, driving under the influence arrest
Can you go by the
investigation
date
report.
stamps that are at the bottom? Okay, I see what you're saying.
What's your next question?
Is that noted elsewhere in your report?
I'm sorry?
Is there... I see this on the psychophysical test, there's a finger to nose.
You're looking in a different area of the report.
Right.
That's under the drug evaluation.
Okay, because as I'm reading your report, it kind of sounds like I'm wondering how I'd be able to stand up, because it sounds like I failed every single thing you asked me to do.
Just ask a question, okay?
Well, that's what I'm asking you. How could someone who's, as you described me in here, possibly even stand up?
I'm not sure of that.
Able to function somewhat, but failed every test you gave him, type thing?
Well, again, the tests are checked for divided attention impairment. They're not pass or fail. Divided attention impairment is the ability to do more than one thing, one simple task.
But you were giving me a pass or fail, weren't you? You weren't saying it in shades of gray. You were saying he didn't perform it satisfactorily. He didn't perform it as he was supposed to. That was your testimony again and again. It wasn't a pass or fail. It's not a shade of gray, according to you.
No, actually, my testimony was that you didn't perform them sufficiently, that you did not perform them as demonstrated or explained.
Like pass or fail?
Well, again, they're not pass or fail tests.
I'm going to sustain the objection. I think he's always described it as it was a question of, as I saw it, gray. You didn't perform sufficiently.
So it's, once you
Wasn't a
don't do
pass
it
or
gray,
fail.
then it becomes pass or fail.
Objection.
His characterization is not pass or fail. His characterization is not performing sufficiently.
And if you don't perform sufficiently, that's noted.
And it was noted. Okay,
To-
so let's
to
go
what
to the
degree,
next
though, is
question.
it noted? If you fell flat on your face, is that
Mr.
distinguished
Coughlin.
from swaying 2 inches? That's pretty, right?
It would
Okay,
be.
so what's the next question?
Unless this report is just beyond reproach and everything in it is considered sacrosanct, Your Honor, I don't want to question that if that's the case. But if
I'm
it's the
just
case that
asking you
we're
to
able to
ask a
look into what
question.
he's doing here
Okay.
and see if he's just an officer
I'm
who's
asking you to ask
kind of a
about-
rogue prosecutor like in the Duke case,
Objection.
or
Okay,
what?
wait, let
you know?
me, I'm asking you to ask a question.
Oh, wait, rogue, okay.
Okay. Ask a question.
Okay. So you asked me if I had anything to drink that night,
I did.
and you noted it in your report?
I did.
And how much did I had to drink that night?
I believe you told me 1 glass of wine around 6 p.m.
Okay. And have you ever smoked marijuana, Officer George?
Objection. Relevancy.
Sustain.
Wouldn't that go into whether or not he could tell
You're
if
the
someone's...
one that's on trial here, not the officer, okay?
If he's
So you
scared
need
to
to ask
answer
a
that, or
question.
if he was afraid of looking like a
I've made my
hypocrite.
ruling on the
Okay.
case, on the question, so
You
let's
haven't-
move on.
Yeah. No?
Let's move
Okay.
on.
Let's see.
The questions need to be relevant to this hearing.
At any time throughout the arrest, particularly when first pulled over, would you say I was argumentative? How would you describe our interaction on a human level?
Similar to your behavior today, I would consider you somewhat argumentative, passive-aggressive, maybe.
Can you describe that?
Like, again, similar to your
I
behavior
mean,
today.
in relation to that night, and give examples of what you mean and how you mean.
Not really, other than we're acting similar to how you're acting today.
Was it in a situation like where you asked me to take a blood test, and I said, why should I take a blood test?
Objection, asked
Is it
answered.
like
I'm going to
that?
sustain the objection. It's
Can you
irrelevant
give me
also.
some situation?
Sure.
Okay.
Like, for example, when I asked you where were you coming from tonight, you said, where are you coming from?
I did? Is that noted in your report?
No.
But you remember that from how long ago?
I do.
And you can't remember whether you were driving or not that night?
Objection. That wasn't even a question posed, Your Honor.
I'm going to
He did say he couldn't remember whether he was driving or
sustain
not.
the objection. This is totally irrelevant.
That's an amazing memory. You can't remember if you're driving? but you
Line
can
of
remember
questioning is totally irrelevant. Let's go on.
something. So we're not going to get into whether... Have you ever been around someone who's smoking marijuana?
Objection. Relevancy.
Sustain.
I don't know how in the hell a guy can get up there and say he's an expert at something if he doesn't even have to answer whether he's been
Mr.
around it.
Coughlin, you need to ask a legal question.
Have you ever been around someone? Have you ever been around
He has
freshly
made
burnt marijuana?
3,000 arrests,
How about,
okay?
Okay, has he ever been around freshly burnt marijuana?
Yes.
Can you describe that? When was that?
Part of the training.
At your DRE class,
Yes.
there was freshly burnt marijuana.
Yes.
And was it being burned? How was it being burned? Was somebody smoking it?
No.
How was it? How were they getting?
Okay, I'm
they were
going to
just putting a
object to this
flame
line.
to it?
I'm not allowing this line of questioning anymore. It's totally irrelevant.
Sorry, Your Honor. So, is there any question I
Point
can
is,
ask
is
that relates to?
you have pled guilty to a dry reckless. So let's move on from there.
But that's not what Ms. Kagan's bringing this up for. Her whole thing is trying to, what? She's not trying to establish that I pled guilty to a dry reckless. We didn't need to spend all this time and taxpayer money collecting all this stuff if that was the point, because I admitted to that. I reported that.
What's the next question?
Why are we even getting into this? And if there's a reason, then am I allowed to rebut it?
I'm not here to answer your questions. You need to ask questions.
My questions go into why we're getting into this. Why are we talking about this arrest in all this detail?
You have a question to ask this officer.
Yeah.
Okay, what is the question?
Have you ever smelled freshly burnt marijuana?
That's
Asked
been
and
asked and
answered.
answered, and what's the next question?
How do you know you're smelling freshly burnt marijuana?
Because it has a different smell than non-burned marijuana.
Is that like a smoky smell?
Again, it's hard to describe. It's a clearly recognizable smell.
Like the standard for obscenity, kind of?
Okay,
Objection.
Is that a question?
Relevancy.
I'm not asking, I am not allowing any more questions in this area. You need to move on to another area.
Yes, Your Honor. Officer George, did we discuss any physical problems that I had?
I did ask you if you had any physical defects, yes.
And can you tell me what I answered?
That you had chronic back pain, and that you were taking prescription Loratab.
Okay. Now, generally, do you have people with chronic back and neck pain stand back and look at the sky and have them count to 30?
Relevancy.
Is that pretty normal for you?
I'm going to overrule the objection.
Well, first off, I believe my answer was that you said you had chronic back pain. So I don't think we've established that you've had neck pain also. And yes, that is a standard field sobriety test that's given.
Would you give that to someone who had one of those halos on their head, like one of
Objection.
those?
Relevancy.
Sustain. Next
Oh, okay.
question.
Would you give it to someone who had a neck brace
Objection.
on?
Relevancy.
Sustain.
Would you give it to someone?
I am not allowing any more questions in this area. I don't think it's relevant. What's the next question?
Do you have some sort of performance incentive for the number of DUIs you give? Is there a quota or do
Objection.
you give?
Relevancy.
I'm going to overrule it.
The question, is there a quota or performance incentive?
Yeah, like let's say you gave one DUI a year compared to a guy who gave 10,000. How would that be seen by your sergeant or whoever it is your boss?
Well, I can't answer for my sergeant. I believe the question was, is there a quota? No, there's not. They actually let us arrest as many people as we want to.
Okay. And some people arrest more?
Some people arrest more, some people arrest less.
Do you consider yourself someone who arrests more or less?
Objection. Relevancy.
Are you like
Sustained. Move on to the
are you a
next
high
question.
performer?
Objection. Relevancy.
Sustained. Next
Do
question.
you give more arrests than the average officer
Objection.
for DUI?
Sustained.
Relevancy.
That is irrelevant. How can that not be relevant?
Coughlin.
Does he give more or less? What if he's given more DUI arrests than anybody
Hey,
in the
I'm going to
history
take
of
a
the
brief
California?
recess. Can you, we're going to take a brief recess at this point, and I will talk to you. You can step
step out.
outside. Yes.
Do you want to go off the record, Your Honor?
Yes.
Just a moment. Back on the record.
Okay, we're back on the record.
All right. Officer George, can you tell me in your report, Bates stamp page 8, it says he had an altered sense of time. This is on the Romberg. Altered sense of time estimating 30 seconds and 33 seconds. Can you tell me, what would be not qualifying as an altered sense of time? Would that be 30 seconds and 30 seconds?
Yes.
So somebody who can close their eyes and without the aid of any mechanical device or watch or who can just count and know exactly how long a second is and hit it within, say, 1/10 of a second within 30 seconds? Is that what would be acceptable, or what would fail that? I mean, 33 seconds. Obviously, if you're off by 3, which means you're off.
Compound.
Just ask a question. Don't get into narratives.
Yeah. What would fail? So, I mean, strike that. We know 33 failed, right? 33 out of 30. So what is
No.
a passing score?
No.
32 out of 30?
No, again, I'm looking for a totality of the situation.
Well, we're not talking about that. We're talking about this one
Well,
part.
no,
Officer
actually,
George.
we
I
are.
don't want to hear about your totality.
Objection. Allow the witness to answer the question.
Allow the witness
I want a
to
yes
answer
or
the
no.
question.
I want a question
He can
that's
explain his yes or no
I want a question that's
answer.
tailored to this.
I understand that, but remember yesterday you were allowed to explain yes or no answers, so please. So what's your question now?
On this second test here, what is a passing?
Okay, I'm not sure, number one, which
In
the,
a number of seconds. As in, is 32 passing, something like that?
okay, you're not referring to the second test, which would be the walk and turn test. You're referring to still the Romberg test?
Yes.
And you're asking me what would be passing?
Yes.
They're not pass or fail tests. I can't give you an answer for that.
Okay, what would not qualify as having an altered sense of time? Because that's the buzzword you're using in this particular. I know you use a lot of buzzwords. What'll work, what won't work, stuff
Can you
like
just
that.
ask a
Objection.
question? Not?
What
narrative?
would not be an altered sense of time? If 33 out of 30
Let's ask a question. What would not be an altered
not
sense of
be
time?
an altered
That's
sense of
the
time,
question.
Officer Gorge.
Well, again, what would not be an altered sense of time would be 30 seconds. However, that's not what this test is based on. It's not based solely on the seconds, which is what you seem to be hung up on.
Well, there's not much
What's
to
the
go
next
on.
question?
Well, I didn't understand his answer. Because, okay, obviously 30.00 is not altered, but in terms of
Mr.
in
Coughlin.
terms of looking at human beings, what would be something where someone would perform this test and you would not write, he had an altered sense of time? And I assume you'd write, his
Objection,
timing
asked
was
when
altered.
answered.
Let's ask a question, no narrative, okay? Otherwise, I'm not going to allow you to cross-examine anymore.
I have had cases where the person did not sway and had 30 seconds, and their time estimation was right on 30 seconds. I'm not, you know, it's a totality of the circumstances. Again, these are not pass-fail tests.
Great. Can you be more specific? Because anybody can say a totality of the circumstance.
Objection,
Okay.
Your Honor. Argumentative and
Sustained. Let's go to the next question.
If I had gotten 31 seconds, what would have that
objection,
gotten
relevancy.
charted as?
I'm going to overrule it. You want to ask the 31 seconds.
Okay, again, you would, based on the totality, if you swayed, it would say that you swayed and however
We're not
many
talking
inches.
about swayed, Officer
Please,
Gorge.
do not argue with the witness. His answer is his answer. Move on to the next question.
Did we even discuss seconds? Because we
Mr.
discussed
Coughlin,
swayed.
I am going to not allow you to ask any more questions if you cannot act like a lawyer and ask a question, a proper question.
If I took 31 and a half seconds, can you just tell me what would wind up in your report?
Objection, relevancy.
I'm going to go ahead and let him ask that question, and that's the last question in this area.
Well, the report would say the number of seconds that you estimated 30 seconds in, be it 29, 28, 30, 31, 32.
Okay.
What's the next question?
But in
What's
this
the next
report, he
question?
put it in the context of a sentence that said he had an altered sense of timing, estimating, blah, blah. So you're not just putting numbers in there. You're putting an altered sense of timing. So what would 31 and a half get me?
It would get you 31 and a half seconds.
Would you say he had an altered sense of timing, estimating 31 and a half seconds and 33 seconds? Because that's what I'm asking.
Okay, again, I don't think you have an understanding of how the test works. Whether or not your time estimation is off, the test itself checks for divided attention impairment, which is standing with your head back and estimating 30 seconds. What I'm looking for is whether or not
I'm
you're...
not asking for your description of the
Let me
test in
explain
total.
the
He's going to describing the test in total, and that's not what I'm asking for.
I don't want any more questions in this area. You need to wrap up your cross-examination.
Have you ever received any commendations as an officer? Medals, commendations, awards?
Yes.
Can you describe this?
Well, let's see. I received a Master Award for shooting. I've been recognized by Mothers Against Drunk Drivers 5 times for my expertise in taking drug and alcohol-impaired drivers off the road.
That's Mothers Against Drunk Drivers?
Correct.
5 times. Is that like Officer of the Year?
No, it's actually not Officer of the Year. That would be separate, and I have not received Officer of the Year, if that's what you're asking me.
Okay, so what have you received from Mothers Against Drunk Drivers?
An award for my efforts in removing alcohol and drug-impaired drivers from the roadway.
5 times, awarded by MAD.
Correct.
For your work in DUI. So it kind of sounds like you're a superstar DUI cop.
Objection, argumentative.
Argumentative, and it's sustained.
Are you? So you've been recognized 5 times by MAD. Is that typical of officers? Or is that because you've had an exemplary record in giving out DUIs at a great rate?
Objection, compound.
Sustained.
Why, okay. Is that typical for an officer to get recognized by MAD 5 times?
I don't know if I can answer typical. There are several officers that have been recognized more, and there are several officers that have been recognized less.
So they don't just recognize 1 a year?
No. For example, this year there are 10 people from my station that are getting an award.
For this particular award or just any award?
This particular award.
This Mothers Against Drunk Driving award?
Correct.
And how many people are in your station that are eligible for the award?
Objection, relevancy.
Sustained.
Would you consider yourself to be someone who is a high-performing officer when it comes to giving out DUIs?
Objection, relevancy.
I'm going to overrule it.
Again, that's a matter of perception. No, I just work hard and do the job that they pay me to do.
So what's the next question?
And so, would you say they're giving out the 5 Mother Against Drunk Driving commendations just because you work hard and you're doing the job they pay you to do, or?
Objection, speculation.
Sustained.
Can you go on about any awards you might have received?
I've received, 5 awards for vehicle theft recovery, numerous written accommodations for anything from rescuing a guy that crashed over a cliff to...
How about we just talk about things related to DUIs? Awards related to DUIs in some whatever tenuous way.
We've already covered that.
Just the MAD, the 5.
Correct.
The 5 MAD recognitions. In your 16 years, wasn't there something about 11 years?
Objection
You've been an
is
officer for 16 years. Have you been something for 11 years?
I've been assigned to my current duty location for the last 11 years.
And that's as a northern.
I work for my current assignment is the North Sacramento CHP office.
Okay. Now, I noticed when you say I swayed, and this is on your report, based on page 8, swayed in all directions approximately 2 inches from center. If someone who's 5 feet tall sways 2 inches, is that different from someone who's 6'4", swaying 2 inches?
No, 2 inches is still 2 inches.
Oh, is it?
Objection,
question.
argumentative.
Argumentative.
I don't think it is.
Argumentative. Next
Okay.
question.
If someone is 5 feet tall and they sway 2 inches, is the percentage that they've swayed compared to their overall height higher
Objection,
than it
asked
would
and
be for
answered.
someone who's 6'4"?
Sustained.
And if the percentage is higher, doesn't that mean they're
Sustained.
swaying more so for their body height?
Sustained. What's the next question?
That's something you might learn in college.
What's the next question?
How do you differentiate between someone who's 7 feet tall swaying and someone who's 5 feet tall swaying?
Objection, relevancy.
Sustained. Next question.
What would be an acceptable distance for someone to sway? What would be someone who's clearly not intoxicated? How much would they sway?
Again, it's a totality of the circumstances.
Okay.
I mean, ideally, 0. It would stand at attention.
So we've got 30.00 seconds and swaying 0. It's kind of like very robotic, right?
Objection,
Is that how you would describe
argumentative.
yourself?
Sustained.
Well, okay, so in a circular way, you've told me what would be good is to do exactly what we're asking you to do, not
Objection.
sway at all. I haven't finished my
Argumentative.
question, Susan.
What's the question? What is the question?
What would be something other than perfect? What would be something that would be would fit in the range of this person is not getting arrested for a DUI and perfect? What's something?
I'm going to allow one more question in
Not
this
a
area.
swaying, I'm
Go
asking.
ahead. Ask the swaying question, and no more questions in the swaying area.
Okay.
Again, it's based on a totality. It's not based on just that test, which is why I give more than one.
But I'm sorry, Your Honor, he keeps doing that. He keeps going, it's totality,
But
it's not based.
I-
He doesn't answer my question.
He doesn't give you the answer you want, so let's move on to the next question.
Any answer he's ever given has been totality, totality.
And that's the way it is. What's the next
Because
question?
you
You
can't say-
can't accept
you can't
it.
say-
Objection, Your Honor, I
half-inch-
move to strike the
'cause your whole
rest of
thing
this
is just
cross-examination. This
baloney.
is a
Baloney.
waste of time.
I'm going to keep it on the record,
Okay.
okay? Move. What's the next question?
So we're not going to get any idea of how much one can sway.
I think I've heard ad nauseum
I've
swaying
heard totality of the
questions.
circumstances. I haven't heard anything about like half an inch, an inch. Can you move it all?
Because it's totality of the circumstances. What's the next question?
Can you describe